Melanie, welcome to the Dark Night of the Soul Unwrapped.
Thank you. It's so great to be here with you, as always.
Thank you. My first question is usually what was happening in your life around the time your Dark Night of the Soul began?
Well, yeah, I was in my, let's see, 40s, and I actually feel as though the dark night had tried to pull at me before. There were a couple times when I was younger, and like yank me down. But I was too frightened to go there. It was way too imposing. So this was the time when I finally um, let it. And I had reached a point in my life and my marriage where I felt like things weren't working, and I started looking for something else. And my marriage fell apart, then my work fell apart, and those were bad enough. And my children, in response to me kind of blowing up my marriage, my children both turned away from me. They were so hurt and angry and scared. And so that was really, now that's bringing sadness again. Um, I remember it, having two children in their early and late teens pull away from me so abruptly was so heartbreaking. And all of it pulled me into this pit. And all I can say is I became really, really depressed. And I'd had depression off and on throughout my life, but this was like the big one. And um, I sought out some help from alternative practitioners, an acupuncturist, and a body worker. That was the main thing. And I started dreaming like crazy, like just dreaming like crazy. So that's sort of the scene and what I started doing to try and help myself through whatever this was that was happening. I did not call it a dark night of the soul at the time. All I knew is I was hurting big time, and I felt like I had just destroyed my life and everyone's around me.
As you said, you'd experienced periods of depression before this.
Yeah, that's what I mean by that calling to me sooner. Like I think the depression points. There was one really big one in my 20s, um, when a guy, I actually not even my 20s, earlier than that, right? Because I was in college. So when he broke up with me, I got so depressed, and the only thing that held me together was my mom at that point. She helped me kind of walk back out of that, but I was really being yanked down by that. So anyway, you were going to ask something after that.
Yeah, in the big pit in your 40s, was there something different on that occasion when you were yanked down to that extent?
Yeah, I think the dreams were, what I'm seeing right now in my mind's eye is this, the dreams were like a ladder. They were like this step ladder that took me piece by piece, step by step, down further and further into the pit. Like they gave me a railing to hold on to go down. They were really bizarre dreams, not just the day residue kind of dreams, but very strange imagery and characters in them, and not necessarily things I recognize from my personal life, in waking life. And they, along with Rolfer, who was also a dream analyst, started to help me realize that there was something in my life that I hadn't been looking at or couldn't see, that was calling, kind of saying, "Hey, I want your attention. I want you to look at this. I want you to be with this," or whatever. And again, this was all, even that call was still unconscious or subconscious. I don't know which is correct. But the pull I felt. And so um, I let myself gradually go down into this really dark place, this really heavy place. And I was very, very depressed for, I don't know, a couple of years.
Was there some sense of movement in those couple of years, either continuing to go down or the pull?
Yeah, yeah, being open to looking at these dreams opened up a whole nother world. So it was as if I went down to a different space of me, and I had a chance to now examine things that I couldn't examine before. And big one was the identity as this good little girl, this kid who always did what she was supposed to, was always nice to everybody, always made everybody pleased and happy, um, didn't rock the boat, walked on eggshells, all the cliched stuff. I tried to do and be that so much of my life, and it I came to realize that it was exhausting, it was, degrading, um, and I didn't wanna hold it up anymore. I didn't wanna make that what I what I needed to be, and it's still an ongoing process to this day to recognize those patterns and habits that have been so ingrained, but that was the beginning of really seeing, "Oh my god, I've been doing this."
Yeah, in my experience, that as you said, there's I loved what you said about being pulled down into a different space of you. That sense of the something calling to you. Looking back now, what would you say about that different space of you and how that was different to the good little you?
It was different because, I was admitting that while I tried to pretend that I was all this goodness and light and sweetness, which I am, um, I was also this, um I was a perpetrator in a sense in how I handled the dissolution of my marriage, and I was, someone shameful by society standards to even get divorced, to leave my kids, to leave my family, all of that. So I was facing shame, I was facing guilt, um, things that I never wanted to look at, never wanted to admit I'd be. So that was a space of me that I was now encountering and willingly starting to face. Um, and it took years because it wasn't a quick thing. It took years to be with that part of me more and more. And at first, it was repulsive and disgusting and earth shattering to admit and to see. But then there was a like relief of, yeah, I don't have to hold up to being that perfect little sweet girl anymore. I mean, I can be that, but I don't have to just be that. I can be all of this too. And that was so freeing as I started to gradually, it wasn't a quick thing, gradually realize, oh, but it's like I had to go through layers of my self-hatred and my self derision and all that. Bit by bit by bit, it's almost like an archaeologist taking that little brush and brushing away little bits at a time. I needed to go through all those bits to then get to the point of, "Oh, yeah, it's actually okay."
I love that archaeology metaphor that really resonates with me and it feels like there's something in that I don't have to be this anymore. That's so powerful, isn't it? I think what we don't realize until this happens to us is that holding up those identities, whatever they are, being good, which was I certainly is one of the ones that I share with you, is that underpinning those identities is everything you just described, the self hatred, the shame, all of that is actually what fuels them, right? And
Right.
perpetuates them. And as you say, so exhausting. I remember one of the early ones that I saw was this identity of having to be clever, because that was one of the few ways that I got praise. And the immense relief in realizing, like, oh, I no longer have to be this. And I
Mhm.
think there's a subtlety in that, isn't it? Because I think sometimes people hear that and think that we're saying that we're not good or that we're not clever.
Right.
But it's actually not that at all, isn't it? It's being relieved of the burden of that being the only thing that we can possibly be.
Right. Right.
And as you said,
Yeah.
including all of this other stuff that at first feels so, as you said, repulsive and awful.
Right. Yeah, it's the propping up that we don't realize. It's like what we've called ugly and bad has actually been what's propped up what we're calling good and wonderful and perfect and fabulous and to be aspired to, and so we haven't appreciated that that whole structure is underneath. And it's like the joke is on me. Oh my gosh. And while we've been talking, I um have been feeling in my body that like the repercussions of talking about this again. So like there was some shaking and there's a thing that happens in my jaw when some stuff gets released and it started to do that again where it my teeth kind of it's all like a little tiny chatter of my teeth that like something's releasing. So that tells me that there's still more that wants to come through. And um it's more of the letting go of the props. That's what it feels like. Yeah, that identification with needing or having to be a certain way was so powerful for me. And I really appreciate it more and more all the time, how it just, what's the word, penetrated every little bit of my life, everywhere. So now I think I've become more sensitive to all those teeny tiny subtle little ways that I try, for instance, to please or to fawn or to um, get approval or attention, any of those things.
What strikes me now is how rewarded those behaviors are in society, especially for women,
Oh God, yes.
and how that supports the doing of those things, because as you said, to step outside of that risks shaming and censure and all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. My relationship with Art, my husband, has been a testing ground for that because he's chosen also to check out his inner landscape. So we've been walking this path together. However, we're both just these humble humans who still get activated by each other. And so sometimes when I'm not buying into my old patterns and I'm just being really straightforward and maybe more what people would say is male like or whatever, sometimes it'll raise an eyebrow or it'll make him stiffen, and I get to watch him react to my not being that people-pleasing good little girl. And that's a really good lesson for him and for me, is to me step back and drop the old way, and for me to then face what another person's reaction to me not playing that game.
Yeah. going back to that sense of being yanked down or something calling to you, what's your sense of that in the light of what we've just been saying about the good little pleasing girl persona? Does it feel like that was something in you sort of yanking you out of that?
Well, for instance, marriage in my upbringing, I lived with a mother who had my grandmother who carried tons of shame because she divorced, and her husband was not. He was a lot of things, and I loved him dearly, and he didn't treat his wife very well, and even was hard on his kids at times. And so in those days, there was so much shame around divorcing, and that got brought into my mom's life, and then it was passed on to me, like a genetic trait. And so when I consciously stepped away from my marriage and it fell apart, the shame came with me. And so to head down into this pit where my good girl persona, good girl way of being was being challenged, um, and had now kind of been given a, what do you call it, a death blow? Um, the shame was a huge thing in that pit. Um, I was so embarrassed and ashamed of myself for being a divorcee and for destroying my family. So I thought, it's all my fault that my kids hate me, and it's all my fault that um, my husband's so shattered, and it's all my fault, everything. So that was one of the huge things that I faced was all this like burden of shame.
That burden of all my fault is so powerful, isn't it? And so intense. And I was just thinking when you were talking before about the being good, the people pleasing, the appeasing, and how related that is actually to survival mechanisms, fight, flight, freeze, and appease. And to step out of that is to step away from the deepest patterns, isn't it? Like you were saying, there are reverberations in your body now talking about it,
Mhm.
and how those things are ingrained not just in our physiology, but have come through the generations, as you were just saying. And so to step out of that is cataclysmic on all levels.
Right, right. Yeah, I've got goosebumps. Yeah, because it felt like I was saying, no, I'm choosing not to live like this anymore. And it may be really, effing hard to execute, but my intention, my wish, my desire is to turn a corner and quit doing this to myself. And really quit doing this to my daughter, and my granddaughter, and like not pass it on in any way that I cannot pass it on if that's at all possible. Um, yeah. And there there was even shame from an abusive situation when I was very young, where I also subconsciously assumed it was my fault, that I'd done something wrong, that I hadn't done something right, to bring all this on. That was another piece of it where I made another vow of, no, I'm not going to perpetuate this facade that we all perpetuate in society anymore. I'm not going to pass the buck to the next generation in this way. Um, and it caused to do that caused all kinds of rifts in family structure, but I just said, nope.
I find that note so deeply moving. I think there's something, as you say, about whenever we say that no and face the consequences of saying that no.
That's the thing is the consequences like that. You may not even recognize it when you first say that nope, but you see very quickly all the consequences unraveling in front of you because everybody else is still clinging to that old way and they don't like that you're standing up in a different way and saying, I refuse to pretend these things anymore.
In my experience in the Dark Night, one of the things that was different about feeling pain than it had been before the Dark Night, because I considered myself to have done a sort of a lot of work on myself at that point, was that it wasn't only about the pain that had been inflicted on me in some shape or form. Fundamentally, it was about what you just said, which was about quitting doing to myself what I'd been doing to myself. And I think the pain of seeing what we've completely inadvertently been doing to ourselves out of all of this patterning and conditioning, the pain of seeing that is has a particular sort of depth to it, doesn't it? There's something really excruciating about
Yeah.
realizing, and again, completely blamelessly, like, well, I've been doing this to myself. And the only way out of this is to say that no and take the consequences.
Yeah. Yeah, and I go in and out of forgetting that I've made that commitment. So, I'll slip back into starting to beat myself up or say again, like, take on fault that's not mine to take on. Um, but my awareness of it, of doing that, of slipping back into the old pattern is so much more quick. Um, but there is a like, there's a agree I mean, there's a death that's happening when you realize, "Oh my god, I've been doing this to myself since I was a little kid." Um, it's bringing some sadness here right now. Yeah, it's a death because you have made some kind of shift, even if it's a shift that waffles, um, now and then or gets wobbly, and that way is dying. That old way of being where you mentioned earlier propping up with all the negative with the positive on top. That whole system is crumbling and falling apart, and there's a death happening. And that's you. That is you. So you're dying, and it's big. And for a while there, I'd come out of taking a look at it and take a breath on the surface, and I'd like look around and go, okay, well, now what? Like, I don't know how to be your I mean, I have an inkling. I've said, "No, I'm not gonna be that way," but now what? How do I retrain myself to be in this life and not people please all the time or not fun or
I so resonate with that. I think there's that stage of being betwixt and between, isn't there? That space in which we really, really don't know how to be in a very, I mean, just to say for anybody who's not experienced this, it's a very literal thing, isn't it? I mean, it's very moment by moment, like, because as you were saying, those patterns of pleasing and appeasing and fawning run so deep. I think that part of us that's dying hasn't known anything beyond that. And so I think all we can do at first is to say the no.
right.
We can't try and sort of fill in the gap or bridge sort of from one to the other. It's as if there has to be no bridge, and in that sense it has to just be a leap. stuck. We get to the point where all we can do, we know that the no has to be said, and we just
Right.
have to say the no and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that's it. It's when I was little, that it brings this memory. When I was little, about 5 or 4, I loved apparently going off this high dive at the pool where we lived overseas. And, it's like being on that end of that board, and you don't know what you're gonna face after you jump. You just know that you're gonna stand there every time. That's where you're gonna go. So the no is you standing at the top of the board. And so the other thing about that is that, when I decided, "No, I can't operate like this anymore," my old operating system doesn't work for me anymore, um, I also knew that I wasn't gonna pick up someone else's old a current operating system as my own because they're all connected. Like, all the old operating systems are all connected, and if I'm not the people pleaser, then I'm the one who needs to be pleased by somebody else, right? Like, so there's all this dynamic, so I knew I didn't wanna pick up any of those old established sides of the equation either, and that's where you're saying there's this "nope," and then there's a big question mark of, "Okay, what's next?"
I've been thinking a lot about this recently again. The radicalness of being on that high diving board, saying no, as you say, to all the versions of the operating system, because precisely it isn't a question of swapping out one for another, but throwing the whole operating system up into the air and kind of moving beyond the operating system on some level, isn't it? And it feels like that's happening collectively in a bigger way than it was when we went through our dark nights.
Right.
And we're all being called in our various ways to look very starkly at the nature of the collective operating systems.
Yeah, I feel like my personal journey this way parallels the collective journey, and it has there are times when I speak to others of what is happening in various pockets of the collective and how things are changing and how people are trying to, um, certain groups of people are trying to bring equality, out and make others aware that we are all humans. We are all human, and, we need to recognize that, and that's really what I was doing in my dark night was to recognize that all these bits and pieces of me that I had parsed out and said, "Okay, you guys can stay and I'll cultivate you and I'll play with you and I'll use you." But the ones that are the ones I didn't wanna look at or admit, they got socked away in some cave and or even in a prison. And I now I'm freeing all of them and letting them all come together and sit and look at them all and say, "Okay, I'm all of this." Well, isn't that what spiritual teachers have been trying to get us to do from the get-go, but they all got messed up in how they did it? And we're just saying, "Okay, I'm all of this and more." And some of it hurts a whole lot, and some of it doesn't. And frankly, the operating system that I had maybe hurt more than the things I said I didn't wanna look at. I don't know if that makes sense.
That makes complete sense. I mean, I think before, just before we're standing on the high diving board, I think our perception is that if we go up there, then we're done for. You know, you talked about it being a death, and I think
Yeah.
for me, and I think this is quite common, it feels like we won't survive it, or it feels like it will be utter catastrophe, and yet there really is something in that. I think it is more painful to keep the pretending going
Yeah.
than it is to actually feel all of that stuff that, as you say, we've imprisoned, we've kept out of the way. And the humaneness that starts to filter in once we begin to do that is like nothing we've experienced prior to that. I think that's one of the things that we don't realize in the early days of the Dark Night is that this is about becoming fully human.
Yeah. Yeah, that word humaneness is really powerful. Where it feels to me as though I was brought up to hide, to dampen down my humaneness by only allowing myself to be this one sliver of me, um, in the whole pie of me. And of course, I had no idea that's what I was doing. I was just doing what I was told and asked to do. And now, when I can acknowledge that, yeah, I'm a mess. I'm a mess. And be okay with that. And even be okay with the fact that I don't like that I'm a mess, all of that. Then I bring that's what I'd call my humaneness. I bring that to the world, to my family, to my friends, to my clients, to the world. And it is excruciating. You don't think you're gonna live through it. I remember when we were doing the inquiry work and our training, um, and we practiced with our colleagues in the class, and I just remember sometimes saying to another classmate, "God, am I ever gonna stop crying or be feeling so angry? Like, is this ever gonna end, or is this just what I'm destined to do, live out the rest of my life?" Um, 'Cause it was so intense, and yet that nope was so strong that I wasn't gonna live the old way, that I just kept going and kept going, and now life is different. Um, there's more evenness to the waves. It's not so all down there in the depths, but, yeah, then it was I didn't think I was gonna get through it.
How did you get through it? I mean, what happened? You were in the pit and doing all of the things we've just described. What happened then?
For me, one of the things was, when I moved in a direction of actually using some, mind altering, mood altering substances, plant medicines for some, ceremony work, and that was the beginning of starting to crack my heart open, and crack my heart open not just to the shame or the sorrow or the anger, but to the the soft love that held it all. And getting those glimpses of this love that was always there, that I kept finding and kept feeling, um, when my guard wasn't up, when my, defenses weren't up, um, helped me hold all the other stuff, all the hard, difficult feelings and thoughts and belief systems that didn't work anymore. It helped me hold them differently than I could have before. And then I could move out of that, and I didn't need a substance to do that. I learned how to do that on my own. And that was what one of the ceremony shaman said to us. He said, you come to a ceremony and you do this work. However, the work doesn't stop here. It's actually just the beginning. You have to keep doing your own, um, and looking at what he called your tendencies.
That's interesting. I've not done plant medicines, but it sounds like it's a reminder of what's already here.
Yes. Yeah. It's exactly that. It's to me, it's glimpses of that part of me and maybe the part of or of existence that's so big and so vast and so indescribable that and the beauty, oh gosh, the beauty of all of this, like even just the wood grain on the table, um, the beauty of it all with that you can forget when you're so in the midst of the dark places that you go when you're in a dark night. And then the beauty can lift you out. Not not even to to take you away from it, but to show you that there's beauty there. Um, there was a time when I was going through the separation from my husband when I went and did these weekends at a friend's place out in the woods. And she brought me this Rumi poem one day when I'd done a fast and I was just finishing it up and I was only eating little bits of orange. That's what I was eating to get started into food again. Gave me this little poem and it was talking about death being in a field of flowers or something like that. Imagine death here or something like that. And that's what it is the beauty and the death all in one that we don't realize is there. And so, like, the ceremony work sometimes reminded me of that.
I'm reminded of what you said about the pie and believing that we're just one sliver of the pie. And I think so often that's what we do, isn't it? We're looking for an opposite sliver as if our sliver's wrong somehow, or we want a better sliver or a less painful sliver or whatever it is. And yet there's something about all of that, being in the place of all of that, that is so much richer somehow than swapping one out for another. And I
Right.
think that's what, I mean, you talked about cracking your heart open. For me, those moments of heart opening have been seeing the heartbreaking beauty of it all,
Right.
seeing the bittersweetness of it all, when everything is included in that, death and life and everything in between.
Yeah. Bittersweet is a word I use a lot now, a whole lot. There's something about, I know when I was little, really little, I really got the sense that exclusion was not how I wanted to live, that exclusion hurt everyone. And so I had trouble with different religions I encountered because they always felt like this is the way, and anyone who doesn't believe our way is just, And so that's what you're talking about is the beauty in the whole and knowing that you are the whole and the whole is you. Um, and it's breathtakingly, heartbreakingly beautiful, you know. So my heart gets broken a lot anymore because I remember a friend of ours saying, like, she could even just look at the sky and it's so beautiful that cracks her heart open just looking at the sky. So that's, I think, the opportunity for me now that I've come out of at least one round of Dark Night in the Soul, um, is that the little moments are as big as the big moments, and the big moments are as small as the little moments. It's all, yeah.
Is there anything else you'd say about how it's been for you in the emerging out of the pit? I mean, as you said, it's been a number of years now since you were in the pit, and for both of us, of course, we know that the unfolding continues in all of
Yeah,
its
yeah,
myriad ways.
yeah, yeah. I'd say one is that I've been pulled back in since then, now and then, but it's because it's more familiar. It's like I have a sense. It's easier for me to surrender to it because I have now a sense that, oh yeah, there's something um, big here that I haven't been willing to face or be with or love or um, acknowledge. And I know now that this is kind of like what is it, a crucible that you can go in, and things like an alchemy reaction that can happen. And so I have that kind of faith about it. And um, I've actually recently been feeling like I'm sitting on the edge of it right now because my husband's not well and his health is really threatened. And so I know there are things about our relationship that I might be clinging to that and have beliefs about that may need some attention. So nowadays it's more like, oh, okay, old friend, I can sink back into that and you can do the work on me. It's like more of that surrender than at first it was like I was going in kicking and screaming.
Mm.
And now it's like, okay, I can come back and let's see what's here this time.
Yeah, I mean, the kicking and screaming, God love it. It's such a great energy in many ways, isn't it? And I think for me, there was also something about the dropping of the idea. I guess I guess in one way we could call it some sort of spiritual ego, or some notion that there would be a point at which I was done, or some notion around, oh well, I've done all of this work, so I know this terrain. And of course, time and time again, the process comes in and shows us that it's completely the reverse. The number of times that that we get to see what we've missed or become aware of something that previously been unaware of, and say something like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I missed this. Like, this is so obvious." But now that's just become funny rather than being a source of some kind of reproach to
Yes.
myself.
Yes, another repercussion, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'll mention to clients now and then when we're in casual conversation and say, "I do wanna share with you that I have a belief that done is not a thing, that there is no such thing as done. So, just know that about me." That we can keep checking things out for as long as you feel it's useful because I don't feel like there's a destination to get to.
For people listening to this, that could both be a relief and also not a relief. I mean, I think it depends how we're holding this, doesn't it? And I think even though, absolutely, my sense is that we're in this organic evolutionary unfolding in which finiteness now feels like something very rigid and inflexible. That isn't to say that things haven't changed massively, that we did learn how to be this without the old operating systems.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. So I can imagine because it used to be upsetting to me to consider that there wouldn't be a done, a final finishing point, um, a finish line. Um, However, now it's not upsetting. It's just actually it's relieving to know that I just get to take another look. I just get to be with something differently. Um, and that humor part, geez, I laugh so much more than I used to, and and at myself a lot about, oh, there you go again. And it used to be instead of "There you go again," with laughter and humor, it used to be, "You stupid shit, why did you blah, 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 blah." So that still comes up at times, but even that, then I can laugh at, "Oh, there you go again." So I think that's that love couching everything, it's the there you go again that's said with this bit of humor and kindness as opposed to acid.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. So for anybody who's right in this now, who's right in the pit, what would you like to share?
Well, the words trust yourself came up, and I pictured a young woman I know. What would I say to her? Another one that comes up is lean on others. Like, we don't have to do this alone. I thought I did, but I was so thankful that that the acupuncturist I met who helped me a lot with that sent me to the dream worker. And then I connected from there with some shaman and that kind of thing. Um, I leaned on people all along the way, and that's really helpful. What else would I say? You're not crazy. You're absolutely not crazy. In fact, I told a dear friend who's having her own dark night right now that she's more sane with every day that I know her than she was when I first met her 12 to 15 years ago. So, yeah, if you question your sanity, just consider that you might not be insane. You might actually be finding your sanity.
I mean, I think this coming out of the old operating system is absolutely a move towards greater sanity. I love that. And even though it feels like craziness at times, because it's the falling apart of
Yeah.
what we've known, it
Yeah,
absolutely, that there's such sanity and such love in that no.
right.
So yeah, thank you. Mel, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Well, just yes, thank you for writing the book, for going through what you did, for writing the book and sharing your experience and everyone else's. And then doing the podcast is an additional icing on the cake. So thank you so much for all of it.
Thank you. I mean, what I'm so touched by just now is seeing myself in the midst of the dark night when I felt like I would never be able to work again, let alone anything else. I lost any notion that what I was going through at that time could possibly be of any benefit to anybody.
Yes,
And I think that notion of us, sometimes carrying each other's loads in whatever way is
right.
is really beautiful. And that's how it panned out for me. And it pans out differently for each of us.
Yeah.
But that ultimately this is about, I mean, I love what you said about leaning on each other, because that feels so important. And such a break away from the old operating system, which is very much around, having to do it ourselves. That if we can be each other's companions in this, as we are, um, then that's what gets us through.
Yeah, sharing the load because it's the human load and we're just taking turns sharing it. Yeah, you're right. That's so beautiful.
Mel, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity. This has been amazing to walk back through and try and piece together, huh, what the hell did happen? So, yeah, thank you.
See you soon.